Hey there, business owners and entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Erin, and I want to wish a super warm welcome and thank Kimberly Spencer for being here. She's going to be talking with me tonight. She's a award-winning high-performance coach and trainer, an Amazon best-selling co-author, international motivational speaker, and the founder of crownyourself.com and the Princess and Bee podcast. So thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you so much for having me on, Erin. It is such an honor to be here with your community, and I am so excited to dive into all the good things of entrepreneurship, which is my favorite thing.
Yeah, it's an exciting world.
It's a very exciting world. It's a very exciting world, especially for entrepreneurs. Like for me, I was talking with a travel business, which, in these times, like not the best business to be in, right?
Right.
But I said, look, dude, you've built a successful car rental company, and that just means you can do it again. Like if you've built a business successfully, you can repeat the process in whatever form. Because once you've gotten that taste of entrepreneurship, it's like, it's in you. And once you've gotten that taste of that,
I've definitely talked with so many multi-passionate entrepreneurs who, once you got it down, you have a passion to kind of keep going. I mean, I think business owners, once they've established themselves, look to other business ventures to start as well.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is the problem that I see with a lot of entrepreneurs starting out who are super multi-passionate is that they don't know how to combine all those passions into one business. So they start, I had one client, she's like, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm like, how much are you making per month? And she said, she was barely making $1,000 a month. And I was like, girl, you made a serial entrepreneur. You're a broke entrepreneur. So I said, let's hone it into one cohesive business. And then you can look at other passions outside. But the key is determine what is the business that you're really in and what are the hobbies. I love, being a mom. I'm not going off and starting a blog and a whole other side business on how to be an extraordinary mom. No, my business has always kind of been crown yourself, but it's that's been my theme for my life. And so other side hustle projects and things, I'm not distracted by shiny object syndrome. It's I know the business that I'm really in, and that's what I see a lot of beginning entrepreneurs really struggle with, is because there's so many opportunities and there's so many ideas, and then one day they're coaching and the next day they're for Arbonne. And not that there's anything wrong with being a direct marketer, but it's if you want to have a consistent brand, and I'm like, holy crap, we're 4 minutes in. We just dove right in.
Look, that's the excitement of it, though. But that brings up a lot of, things that I tend to be talking about with a lot of people from my audience as well. Anyway, is you're building a business, but you're also building the life that you want. And having that balance between the two is so critical to your own health and sanity.
And not everything needs to be part of your business.
Right.
I mean, not everything has to be. You don't have to love. I love jewelry. I love jewelry. I am so happy my good friend Leah Valencia Key makes such beautiful jewelry so that I don't have to make it.
Right.
Okay, cool. You're going to make these beautiful earrings and these things that I love. Awesome. I'm not going to go off and build a jewelry
business. Add another
business.
hat.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is so many entrepreneurs, before they've even had traction in one business, and I used to say it too. I totally used to say it too. That's why I own the fact I've been there. And I remember when I was first starting my e-commerce company, and back then I was also doing some branding work for my husband. I was helping him brand his dating cooking show. I was doing some coaching and website building. And my business partner was like, hey, Kim, he's like, I know you've got all these other side projects and things. He said, but I really need you to be all in on this. I need you to let's light this fire, grow this, and then you can start on that do whatever it is once this is profitable. And I did. And I really dropped the other projects I was working on. and really went all in. And I went all in the business. And we were able to get our product featured in Times Square. I got to pitch it to the first round of Shark Tank auditions. We were getting into angel investors and got it doctor recommended. And then my partner wanted to buy me out. So then I was left with like, hey, what?
So then you put all that work in. And I think I've talked with a lot of entrepreneurs who have like similar horror stories, and I call them horror stories with love because like it's a part of the journey and it's a part of learning those things. But like I know I've had friends I've spoke with who invested in that business coach or that mentor and lost 20K or so. Like, that's a big lesson to learn. But when you learn that lesson, you know that when you do go in all in, you have it figured out. You've honed in on what exactly that end goal looks like.
And the beautiful thing is, and I've had this, I've heard about that scary thing of like investing in a coach, because I look back on my e-commerce company and I really wish I had had a business coach back then, who coaches the way that I coach right now, which is on values alignment. Because with a vision and with values, like we all have our values and we live so subconsciously by them because they're just part of us.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's so unconscious for us to live our values that we don't even know that we're doing it. The problem is that when you come together in a partnership or in some sort of partnership business, you're both bringing two separate, totally unconscious forms of values into one business. And unless that is consciously and cognitively discussed and aligned as to like, okay, which ones are we bringing into this baby? Which ones are we going to put into this baby? Like, do we want the brown eyes? Do we want do we want to be health focused? Do we want to be customer focused? Do we have a can-do attitude? Are we more focused about structure and systems, or are you more focused on taking action, taking the lead, going forth and conquering? And so that was really the ultimate problem with my business partner. Not that his values were bad or my values were bad. It was just we were different. Yeah. And we never had that solid foundation of a values discussion, which is the foundation of every business. Like your business is like a human. It's basically like you are like God creating a human. And if you think about this, because having gone through a pregnancy, and like when a human is growing inside of you, at first it's like all these little multiple cells of ideas. And then it starts to form and it starts to get that spinal cord and it starts to get that brainstem. And that spinal cord and that brainstem, the nervous system is so essential in your business, which is the vision, which is like what is going to be forming on this vision, what is going to be forming on this spinal pathway that we have. And then from there, the other systems build around it. Your circulatory system, how are you circulating customers in and out of your business?
And as you get on that road, it's like it becomes more intentional with every day,
It does. And it's that consciousness of being able to be consciously aware of what is the baby that you are creating. Not just, and so often I see entrepreneurs really struggle with keeping that baby like attached to themselves. And I'm like, it ain't inside of you anymore. It ain't inside of you. You're birthing it. You're constantly birthing it and growing it on like a parent on every single day. And you're constantly having to pivot and adapt and learn with like how it grows and adapts and changes as it goes through life and its various stages. But the key is to know what stage of the business are you actually in. Like if you're not, and I wrote an article on this that was quite cheeky, as they would say in Australia, but so many entrepreneurs think they need to do all this like random
hashtag
shit.
All of the things.
All the things, exactly. And they're like, I just need to do an Instagram rebrand and that'll grow my business. I'm like, no. There's only one process. Just like there's only one process to make a baby. Sperm's got to meet that egg. There's only one process that actually makes a business, which is cash has got to meet your products and services. That's it. Yeah. And it makes it really simple.
Activities.
Yeah, you have to have revenue producing activities or else you don't have a business, you have a hobby. I've called out so many entrepreneurs, or wantrepreneurs technically, because they're like, I have a business, I'm multi-passionate. And I'm like, that's awesome. Cool. I love your passions. How much money have you made? They're like, none. Or like, I sold one thing. Barely anything sold. Like nothing is sold. But they're spending all this time on like list building and Instagram branding and, podcasting. And not that all of those things don't contribute to your business. They just don't create a business.
Right. They don't directly create.
They don't they're flirting.
Those are long-term strategies.
Yeah, they're flirting with the idea of having a business, but there is one process where you are making an offer that people pay you for, whether that's offering, your homemade candlesticks, or that's offering your, $30,000 coaching services, or that's it doesn't matter as long as you are making that offer and someone is paying you. Yep. That then and only then do you actually have a business.
Right. So to give some insight into where you're coming from and about Crown Yourself, just to tell my audience a little bit more about that. Plus, I enjoyed the first part of your entrepreneurial story at 5. Tell us a little bit more about where you got started.
So I grew up with 2 entrepreneur parents. So entrepreneurship has kind of been in my blood. My parents were kind of the weird ones in their family who went off and started a business. Nobody else understood that. Nobody else in my family is entrepreneurial except for my parents. And that taught me that there is an entirely different mindset that entrepreneurs have. So I grew up, like my mom was pushing me in the stroller as she was passing out flyers to the neighbors about my parents' business, about their arborist business, about how they could cut people's trees. Like that's what she was doing to hustle. So I grew up as a baby, I was in the hustle in the stroller. So right. I loved this idea of being able to, create stories and create and produce transformative stories. And so when I was a kid, and this is a question I commonly ask my clients, is what did you want to be? Who did you want to what did you want to do? And who were you when you were about 4, 5, 6 years old? Because that is a prime time for your subconscious mind before all the world puts their shoulds and supposed tos on you and says, oh, you can't do that, or, oh, that's not realistic, or, oh, da-da-da-da-da. When you're about 4 to 5, 6 years old, that is like prime subconscious, like freedom, imagination, manifestation mode. And that is really partly the core of who you are. And so when I was 4, 5, 6 years old, I was creating these backyard productions. I would corral all the neighborhood kids to this backyard production. I would get investors, aka my parents, to invest in the production of these stories that I would produce, that I would write, that I would of course star in, and that I would then sell things at the door to be able to give an ROI to my investors. I didn't know I was doing it at the time, but I thought, okay, well, I'll pay
when you think about it though, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs will struggle with that if they have not already, is there's 1,000 people out there who may not support what you're trying to do, who may tell you it's the wrong thing to do, but when you know down inside and you are confident in your ability and in your offer, it becomes a whole new ball game. And entrepreneurs have that mindset, and you got to grow into a family where you had that mindset already available for you.
And I think of entrepreneurship because at first I thought, I went through a phase of then this means I want to be an actor and a producer in Hollywood. And I did. And I did that dance, and I got my screenplay, the first feature film that I co-wrote, produced, and it's distributed by Lionsgate and on Netflix. And it was very exciting. But I remember when I was 24 at the premiere, and I was surprised that I was only 80% fulfilled, 80 to 90% fulfilled. And I was like, what is up? This was lifelong dream. My name's up there on the big screen. I'm at this red carpet premiere. I get to get all glammed up down in Orange County, signing autographs. And I'm I thought this was my dream. And I'm okay, why am I only 90% fulfilled? And I've always had this ability to check myself whenever I'm I get curious whenever I have that moment, that sort of aha, that sort of what's up? Yeah. I instead of getting judgmental about it, I get really curious. And I'm okay, what's up? And I found out that 2 weeks later, one of the guys who had come with a friend of mine to the movie premiere, because when you write a movie, you get extra tickets. I had come and changed his life around because of the story that he saw on the screen. And I was like, that is what I want to do. That's what I wanted. I want to transform people's stories. And little did I realize I've been doing that since I was 4, 5, 6 years old. Like, all the stories I would write were stories of princesses who had to go on some sort of journey. They had to become somebody. They had to, in essence, earn the right to be queen. They had to face something. They had to go through struggle. They had to go through challenge to then become the queen. I never liked the princesses that were like, just had to fall asleep and then get kissed or lose a shoe. Like, like, I loved the Bells. I loved the Little Mermaids. I loved, now I love the Elsa, like, who has to go through a process of transformation. And so I would produce these plays. And if you think about it, as an entrepreneur, you are the writer of your story. You are the director of the production of your business. If you're funding it, if you're self-funding it, you're the producer. If you have outside investors, you have executive producers to your production. And and ideally you have to market it. So you have to build in a community. So that's also entrepreneurship involved.
And that journey is what births leaders. It's that journey.
And that's what I absolutely love is the stories that I was able to bring to life. It's now I'm able to do it on a regular basis with all of my clients and all of my students, is transforming people's stories about what is possible. About what is possible for their life, what is possible for their relationships, stripping away all of those shoulds of what business should be. Because what I found is so many entrepreneurs, especially when they're first starting out, they put business up on this pedestal of like, now it's a business. Yeah. And so now it's like
it's that unavoidable narcissism that has been instilled in the business world from past generations, and it's breaking its chain. There's people that are learning to bring them to the business because ultimately, to get the best business from yourself, you have to have the best you. You have to take care of yourself. And when we're trying to, put this show on, I guess, not being just 100% us, it can be super exhausting. You will burn out so fast, but it's a pattern for entrepreneurs in their getting going days.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I see it so often with and it's a concept of fake it till you make it. And I know, because I did it too. I did it too in my e-commerce business. I was trying to this
becomes so real.
I was trying to be this buttoned up business person. I mean, I remember when I first started Crown Yourself, before it was making any money, and I knew what I wanted it to be. I knew what I wanted to preach. I mean, I just found 5 years later, my first business plan that I wrote, because I was very formal, and I wrote a business plan because Lord knows how, successful those are. and I wrote it, and I was looking at my core mission, and it hasn't changed that much. I just wasn't being it. Back then in 2015, early 2016, I was so scared to be authentically myself because I had just gone through 3 months of legal interactions, and lawyers don't send you the most lovely, kind emails.
No, not at all.
It was the first time I'd ever had my integrity called into check, my capability called into check, my background, my history. And it was the first time I'd ever actually experienced crippling doubt. Because prior to that, I'd always been incredibly tenacious and audacious with what I wanted. If I wanted something, when my writing partner came up and asked me to produce the film, and I said, "Oh, do you have a script?" And he said, "No." I said, "Great, let me write it." And he was like, "Really? You write movies?" And I was like, "I can. Let's give it a go." Yeah. And so I wrote 10 pages. I passed it off to the executive producer. They were like, "How do you understand men's minds?" I'm like, "It's not that hard." And they let me write it and co-write it with the director. But it was because I was very audacious with making these asks. I mean, I just had one of my very, very old friends back from my acting days on my podcast. And she was sharing with me about how we used to go out and we would go to the casting director's office and we would pass out our headshots. And I had that hustle with show business just as much as I did with my Pilates business, just as I did with my e-commerce business. But after I was bought out of my e-commerce business, that was the first time I ever experienced really crippling doubt, where I just questioned everything. I questioned if I could. I questioned how I would ever be able to do it. I questioned myself. I questioned my capabilities. And I'm so grateful I went through that process, because now when clients come to me and they're stuck in their own dungeon of doubt in whatever it is, whether it's growing, and it doesn't matter the income level that they're at. I've had clients,
self-limiting beliefs will come in at so many different phases.
The money is totally relative. I've had, just like when I was teaching Pilates I taught Pilates for 10 years. That was my first official business. And when I was teaching Pilates, I realized it didn't matter whether someone was technically fat or technically thin, or whether they worked out 3 times a day, or 3 times a week, or 3 times a month, or if they ate technically healthy, or if they really didn't. What mattered was how they thought about their body. And so it really didn't matter as to how someone looked. The same is true in business. It doesn't matter whether they're making $50K a month or $5K a month.
And the same is true in life. The same is true in life. Our words are so much more powerful than we realize.
Yeah. I've seen the same limiting beliefs of doubt hitting someone at $50K a month, and they're like, I don't know, I don't feel like I have any money. I'm like, I can guarantee you, I have a whole list of entrepreneurs who would just kill for $50,000 a month. But it's because they haven't gotten the process of celebrating those incremental wins, of celebrating those daily wins of achievement,
and building momentum on them.
Yeah, and again, building momentum. Exactly. That's the money loves momentum, and momentum is key, but celebrating the momentum is also essential.
And it's key to being able to maintain it.
Yeah, because otherwise you can always keep on going for that next Everest, and you'll always be able to climb it. But when you get to the top, you're going to be like, okay, now what? I was with my screenplay. I was like, okay, well, I did that. One of my favorite sculptures, I was in Florence for my honeymoon. And we were going into, oh my gosh, the best steak I've ever had.
That's so romantic, though.
It was so romantic. My husband looked at the steak the same way he looked at me in my wedding dress. It was lovely. It was a great moment. Yeah, he looked at it. He started tearing up. He had his first bite, and he's such a foodie that he was just like, "This is." And there was an accordion player. We were in this piazza. It was gorgeous. It was a perfect moment. But I was like, "You're looking at that steak the same way you just looked at me 2 weeks ago." Was it cattle fed?
Was it grass-fed cattle?
It was the Florentine steak. So the grass-fed, only made in Florence Florentine steak. It was gorgeous.
I'm a foodie, so
yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing. And so, but we were in Florence, and then we went to the museum where the David was. And what I loved about the museum is the way that it's structured is you're walking through this hallway, and this whole hall has all of these different sculptures by Michelangelo, and a lot of them are unfinished. And it's almost like something was emerging from these sculptures, because he always said that he could see the sculpture inside the marble, but they weren't completely out yet until you get to this David. And I remember looking at David and just the sheer height of it, because I'm 5'2" and tiny and fun-sized. So I'm looking up pretty high, and I'm looking into his eyes, and suddenly I start crying. And I look, and I'm like, what is it about his eyes? What is it about this moment that Michelangelo captured? And it's the whole story behind David is that he just slew the giant, vanquished the foe. And now just imagine being a young boy, being a young person who's achieved something miraculous, and everybody's looking at you, and you're like, fuck, now what?
I love it.
And that was the reaction, because it was just it hit me, because it was just that moment that I identified with as well, because I was on my honeymoon going, well, I now don't have my e-commerce company, so fuck, now what?
Right. And I know I wrote down the questions that I'd gotten from Instagram, and that was one that kind of ties into this. Is they asked, how can we shift our perspective to enjoy the process more than the goal attainment? That was one of the viewer questions. So
awesome.
So I think we just touched on that so effective, so efficiently. But no, it's true. And, being able to enjoy the journey, especially as an entrepreneur, will be challenged so many times. Entrepreneurship is rough. It just is. and being able to get to your goal attainment.
It's not for everyone either.
No.
Like, and this is what I've seen with a lot of entrepreneurs is they start a business for this desire to have greater freedom.
Right.
But they end up creating a job that they're working in 24/7 practically,
break.
bragging about how busy they are, you know,
spinning their wheels.
I call it the penis productivity paradigm of how long is your to-do list, and just slapping that sucker down.
I was watching some of the old episodes of your podcast, and I heard you say it for the first time, and I was like, oh yeah, we're going to get along just fine. So
yeah, that one, and it just got me going because I was listening to these, I was in a group with a whole bunch of entrepreneurs, and I was the one who was making the most out of all of them. Like, and I was just listening to their conversations, and I was like, oh my God, I used to do that. I used to do that 1 year ago. Like I used to do that. Like when I would, you know, brag about how busy I was. And the problem is on a subconscious level, if you are bragging about the fact, if you are constantly reaffirming to your subconscious mind that you're doing everything you can, that you're so busy, there's no space. There's no space to grow. There's no space for that baby to develop. Like when a baby is growing in your womb, it's creating that space. But what happens when it gets like when there's nothing left, like there's no room for growth? If you're constantly busying yourself all the time with all the things, then there's no space for that vision. Yeah. And so the key is how can you actually create more space to enjoy the process? Like I had one client, very successful actress, and she, like the one thing that she wanted was to go outside and sit in the hammock that she'd put up 6 months ago. That was the whole reason for buying the house, that she could have like the trees and the hammock outside and, you know, this Instagrammable lifestyle. But she was always working. She was always so busy with both, you know, her acting work and her real estate business. And I said, well, girl, like, let's create the space. And it was so uncomfortable. She did it, and she emailed me back, and she was like, that was probably the most uncomfortable 15 minutes I've ever had in my life.
That means it was the most productive, though.
Exactly. Because she was so stuck in doing mode, and it had obviously allowed her to achieve a lot. But the real thing, the real stuff of life, that fulfillment of the joy of what you've achieved, she didn't have that because she wasn't taking the time to do the things that really created that enjoyment. So like for me, I have a personal policy of a checklist that I look at pretty much every day. I mean, I'm not super religious with my checklist, but I use it kind of as a guide. And so I have my 2 meditations that I do a day, and, you know, did I exercise? I'm like, yeah, I did. But then there are these things that I prize, which are my walks and park dates with my son. That's like that is a
non-negotiable.
Exactly. There we go. It's just, and taking that time out. Like I never, ever, ever wanted to be the mom who was so busy that her kid didn't think she was a priority. Yeah. And I was like, that's so what instead I said, I will make a conscious effort to be 100% present. No phone, no emails out while at the park. I do not multitask. Our brains really suck at multitasking, no matter how good you think you are at it.
Yeah.
And I really am work on being as present and intentional as possible. And I think that's one of the parts to answer your listener's question of how do you enjoy the process of creating a business more, is the more presence, the more intention you can put into the work that you're doing.
Absolutely.
It changes the game. We're so used to immediately jumping because there's you know, in business, there's like 5 million things we can do.
Yeah.
Like you will never be at a loss for things you can do. Doesn't mean you should do them.
Right.
Doesn't mean that. And nobody else can tell you if you should do them. You will know in your heart, but only if you take those moments to check in and pause and align and then act with intention.
Yes. And don't be afraid to delegate. A lot of new
Oh
entrepreneurs
my gosh.
have the huge fear of letting go of all of the things. And, that's something I talk about a lot because it was something that I personally, I went from waitress to real estate receptionist to freelancer to, customer service. I had to break that cycle of what everyone else needed and what everyone else was wanting. And remember that I built this business maybe because I wanted freedom and flexibility in the beginning, but to build a life and a business that I wanted for myself. And when you put your intention into that, you have to remember to do things in a way and have a balance between the two things that creates both the business you love and the life you love so that you have that equality within there.
And that's not to say that there aren't periods of hustle. Like I don't really love the metaphor of balance, because if you think of balance as a scale, like if you have to take, in order to have things equally balanced, you have to take one thing away from the other. Well, I don't want to take away from profit.
Exactly. And
I also don't want to take away from time with my son. So I look at that balance as, instead of, I think of it like harmony. Right. Like there are if we had a one note symphony, it would suck. No one would listen to it. just like nobody feels fulfilled with having a one note life, constantly working on their computer, driving their business forward. I think I remember when we had our pre-chat, I told you that there was a joke that my husband had that, like, when I was making no money in my business, I could not sit through 15 minutes of a show without then pulling out my computer. I was on my computer all the time. I don't know what I was doing. I really don't. I'm like, what was it? I really don't know what I was doing, but I thought I was being productive. And that's such an illusion. It's such an illusion. We have to check ourselves on the stories that we're telling ourselves of what is actually moving the needle and what is actually moving the needle.
And training ourselves to stay with that mindset. It's easy to venture away from it and to, develop. It's easier to develop a bad habit than a good habit, right? So we have to retrain our minds to keep in mind those things.
Yeah, and to keep in mind the lifestyle that we want to create, to keep in mind the reason why we wanted to create this business. And so often it is for freedom, but most often what I see with entrepreneurs is they misconstrue freedom with control. Like they'd much rather control their own life and control their own misery than having a boss tell them, work 24 hours a day. Like, so they and that's the problem, is that it is about that surrender of that control. I do believe both entrepreneurship and parenthood are just, those are personal development on steroids, because it's a spiritual game when you are practicing surrendering control, trusting, and building a sense of certainty within yourself that you will be able to make it happen, that you will be able to create results. Like, that is essential to be able to curate that sense of certainty, because so often what gets beginning entrepreneurs stuck is they don't have that sense of certainty. So they're doing all these things, but they don't have the certainty in the belief that it will work. And without that, you might as well just stop doing. You might as well just like press pause, check yourself.
And when you're experiencing those things, a lot of the times the people you're talking to are aware of it, because it kind of shows. Being able to be confident in your offer, you want to be confident when you go into a sales call with a potential client or customer, because if you're not confident in it, then neither are they. Exactly.
And it's, the confidence is cultivated through competence and through the practice. So the sucky part about entrepreneurship is you can't read about it. You can't Google about it. You got to actually do it.
And you just have to get started. You just have to start, because it's never going to be a good time.
Like, I can't give you a book on swimming and like you will know how to swim, because if the only way you will know how to swim is if you throw yourself in the water and start flailing around at first. Maybe you have to grab onto the side and practice. Maybe you get a coach or a swimming teacher and they help train you as to, here's what you look for, here's what you can see, here's how you can build these practices, here's how you do the strokes.
And so hopefully no one's dad will do them like my dad did me and was just like, here, swim. Yeah.
Go. You'll figure it out. Don't drown.
You got floaties on. Swim.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's funny. My dad taught me to swim and saved my life from a swimming instructor that was not very good. So that again goes to say, like, not all coaches are awesome. Like,
they can give you the tools. It's about being able to use them.
Yeah. And and also having that awareness too. They can give you the tools, they can give you the guidance. It's how you use them. And it's also the value that you choose to get out of it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like,
everyone, for me, I don't key takeaway from something. Like, I keep in mind when I wake up every day that I might learn a new lesson from a 3-year-old. Something they say might be, it's just the way it speaks to you. It's the message and the value that you get out of everything you're receiving, out of every message you receive.
I have spent so much money on coaches and mentors and really valuable investments. The greatest investment, my child. Every day he is coaching me on how to be more patient. He is coaching me on how to teach better. He is coaching me on how to deliver metaphors better so that maybe I can better be maybe he can better understand. I mean, it is a constant daily practice of learning how to be coachable and flexible with a toddler. None of my coaches came in and lived with me. So I think that's the benefit of being a parent. And it was my son who was the catalyst really for my business to really turn pro instead of being a dabbler like I was with, like, sometimes I'd post sporadically and I'd always be on the computer, but I didn't have any offers, to suddenly having an offer and then being able to grow.
Yeah. And actually, just as we were looking through, I remembered there was a mom with a question. And she was asking, how do you find time to be able to manage and handle both business ownership and being a new mom as well? And that's, kind of what we were just talking about, but it gets a little bit deeper with that question.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I first found out I was pregnant, that's when I put I drew the line in the sand. I stepped over, I burned the boats. I said, I'm going full pro. I was $35,000 in debt, and I invested my first $5,000 in my first coach because I said, I know I'm at the point where I know whatever this is going on in my mindset. I don't know how to navigate this. I said, if I would have figured it out, I would have figured it out by now. And so I hired my first coach, and I got certified in timeline therapy, neuro-linguistic programming, and hypnosis. And within 3 months, I got my first client, and then I got another client, and then it grew from there. And then, of course, you have to give birth to a baby eventually. Like, there's a deadline. So I remember when I was 7 months pregnant, I got my first business coach. And I signed up for this business. Like, I was making money in my business, but I still had not, broken through. I hadn't broken through my debt. And I invested another $5,000 in a business coaching program. And I remember telling my husband when I was like, I'm looking to make this investment. I'm not asking for your approval. I just want you to know, because I believe that, especially as entrepreneurs, my husband's an entrepreneur, so it makes the conversations very easy for us. But a lot of women, if your spouse is not an entrepreneur, there's a different way of thinking. And your business is ultimately your business. Yeah. And I see so many women defer their power to their partner to make the business decision for them when they don't have a clue about business.
Right.
They've never done it.
Doing it with you in the trenches every day.
Yeah, if they haven't built a business, they don't know if they're so used to taking a paycheck. They don't know how to
answer that question.
It's a very different thing looking at an investment of coaching. But my husband understood, and he said, I just want to ask why. And I said, because I am about to enter into the greatest phase of my life, being both a mom and an entrepreneur with a new business. I said, I know that I cannot do this alone. I know that I need a community around me to support me through this. And I know that I need some guidance as to what to do. Like, I need some coaching. And so I signed up for a business coaching program that was 6 months. So obviously there would be like a good 6 weeks in there where I had a baby and had to take a moment. But one of the things is your children can either be your greatest asset or your greatest excuse. And I mean, so often I see people put off, I'll wait until they get older, or I'll wait until this.
Yeah.
And it was when I found out there's never a good time. And it was when I found out I was pregnant that I looked at my life, and I looked at not just my life and my results, but I looked at who I was being. And I saw that the person that I was, having an unsuccessful business, struggling to pay my bills, in this mindset of massive amounts of scarcity and fear, I said, I don't want that for my kid. Like, I want him to see possibility. And I want him
where you wanted to become.
Exactly. And I knew that kids will not always listen to what you say. And I've had this conversation with many a parentpreneur. They will listen to what you do. They will listen and they will listen to how you do it. And so if you go in like, oh my gosh, it's so hard. Business is so hard. And okay, honey, I'm going to go. No, like, they're going to see that. They're going to see struggle. They're going to see suffering. They're going to be like, well, why would you want to do this? It's going to mold their environment. So in our house, like, what we do with now my toddler is, like, when I go into a client or into a podcast interview, like, we have a celebration. We're like, yay, mama. And then my husband will give me a yay, mama. And my son will go, yay, mama, yay, dada, yay, Decky. And so there's a cheering. So we're going into the arena with the cheers already going, like, to show that excitement. And I constantly tell him, I'm like, mama's going to go help people. Mama's going to go help people. It's like, oh, cool. Mama's going to go help people. I want to help people. And so now my son has 3 stores in the Gold Coast. It's his favorite playtime. He has these little, like, each of the play places, he has a restaurant. He goes, I got to go visit my store. And he loves playing entrepreneur and ordering. And so it's so cute. But back to your listener's question of how do you build a business with an infant? For me, infancy was so easy because I was so grateful that I had my baby and my business, because it saved my sanity in so many ways. Because infancy, when a baby is an infant between 0 and 5 months, that time they are doing 3 things. They are pooping, they are sleeping, and they are nursing.
And there are some babies, true, that there are some babies that are fussier than others. True.
Yeah.
And if you're tired, I think the main thing is take care of yourself. Don't stress the business. Yeah.
Rest. Like, the key is your mental health, and your, like, that is more important, because that directs the business. It doesn't matter how shiny or beautiful your business may look on the outside. As the leader goes, the business follows. So think of the Titanic. They had the most beautiful ship on the planet. It looked gorgeous. It looked like it was running very smoothly, but its leader was leading it into an iceberg. So, because of pride. So the key is to take that step back, check yourself, and check in with yourself first. Then see, okay, what can I do? Because for me, I was I was very blessed with a Zen baby for the most part. And I built my business for the first 6 weeks with my son on my chest and my laptop. And there are pictures, and I send pictures to my community of, like, this is what it took. And it just took me just saying, okay, he's going to sleep on my chest. Great. Let me figure out how I can have my laptop, and how I can start connecting with people, and how I can, take a lesson or learn something new while he's sleeping with my headphones in. So that allowed me, you actually have more time than you think. It's the stories that you're telling yourself about what it takes, because
he plays into what we were talking about earlier. Like, your words are so much more powerful than you realize.
And the story that you tell yourself is huge. Like, I kept on telling myself, like, of course I can do it. Of course I can do it. Of course I'm building my business with my baby on my chest. Like, how else would I do it? Like, I made it seem like it was so freaking normal that there was, like, why would I do it any other way? Like, and I included Declan in the building of it. So I would include and involve him in, when I was reading a book. And if I was, like, sitting, with him nursing, I'd have if I was taking a training or listening to a mentor or listening to a podcast, I would have it playing on. And I'd talk it through with him. So I've always kind of involved him with the process. So
you don't have to separate it. It's like not separating life and not separating life and business.
And I see so many entrepreneurs who want to, like, compartmentalize each of these little parts of their lives. And that's the problem,
is duality.
It does. And we are holistic beings. I mean, I had one client, she told me that she wanted to have $1 million business 8 months before she told her husband. Like, and I was like, wait, girl, your husband doesn't know? She's like, no, because her husband would go away and she'd work on her business while he was at work. And then when he would come home, they would be just, happy married couple. He wouldn't really ask her many questions about her business. And she was feeling almost resentment to why isn't he asking me questions? I'm like, well, why aren't you telling him anything?
Yeah, you gotta fill him in.
You gotta fill him in. And every time I've had a client have that experience where in the past they've compartmentalized these sections of their lives, as soon as they integrate them, not only do they have far more love for what they're doing, but they also have that fulfillment and they also feel that support. Because ideally, if you're married to somebody who really, really loves and supports you, they're going to be cheering you on the whole way of whatever decisions you make. And that's the beauty of it, is that they will be cheering you on to greater and greater success. And they'll trust that you made the right decision to do that, to hire that coach or to join that program or to work with that.
It's like that decision to marry them.
Yeah, they'll trust that you made the right decision because they already know that you make good decisions because you married them.
Yeah, ideally.
I mean, that's not always the case, but ideally there is that, if there is that foundation of trust in your primary romantic relationship, if there is that foundation of trust and mutual respect, then they're going to respect whatever decision it is that you have. You just have to have the courage to say that this is what you want, that this is what you're doing, that this is what you're building, that these are the action steps that you're taking.
Right. And having confidence in it from then forth.
Yeah. And also being able to, I mean, in some ways it also kind of gives you that excitement to then produce more results, because you're like, ooh, let me show you what I can do. Like, let me show you. Like,
especially when you're doing
celebrating with my husband when I'm
especially when you're doing something that you love, because when you're passionate about it, you're going to feel it so much more. And it's going to be a lot more fulfilling. If you're trying to push a business doing something you genuinely don't like doing, you're headed for disaster. It's just, you have to have passion for it.
And the beauty is passion is contagious. And so the passion that you feel in your business, the passion that you feel, the excitement, that it permeates into your relationships. And who doesn't love passion in their relationships? And this is the thing that I see with some of my older entrepreneurs, because I have a lot of Gen Xers, where they've been in a relationship for a while and they start starting their business and they start getting more passionate, and then their partner's like, what's going on? Like, what's up with you? Like, because they've gotten so used to being in this rut and in this sort of we're married, we're practically roommates, we're just kind of doing our thing.
Yeah.
And either the partner rises into finding something he or she is also mutually passionate about, or the relationship ends up splitting. And for actually the best, every single one of my clients who has gotten divorced throughout the process of coaching with me, not that I said that they needed to get divorced. I never would ever say that.
Just to clarify.
I never would ever say that to anyone. You should do this. No. It's not my place to tell you what you should do or are supposed to do. You know what you should do. Yeah. And I just can help guide with some questions of, is this aligned? Is this how can we make this the best situation for everyone involved? How can you come to a mutual resolution? What is that resolution? I'll ask those types of questions that don't require a specific answer, that allow you to think through and process it. But I'd say I have had at least 3 or 4 clients now that have gone through divorces during the course of their transformation work with me.
It's because it's all part of the journey of being able to look inward and find out what exactly it is that you want. And when you're in the process of getting to where you want to be, you'll learn that things about yourself, things about your life, a lot of things have changed. And it's okay.
And sometimes things will shift and fall away. And that's what I've found is in the relationships that aren't on the same growth trajectory, where the relationships or people who are kind of either stuck in their own ways or have their own self-limiting beliefs and are kind of living in those old stories that you're now escaping from. You can either be the inspiration and lead them out, or the relationship it ends up splitting normally with mutual happiness on both sides.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that isn't hurtful or challenging or anything that happens. I mean, but it can be a part of the growth process. So the biggest thing is involve your partner in the growth process. Get them excited about the growth that you're doing. Get them excited. Like
And
remember
it helps
when I was
to have the support that you want.
Yeah, you also feel more supported. Like my husband, how I also, to answer again your listener's question of like how to do it with a baby, because I know with ask for support. The only time, so back in 2018, my business, like in the past, my husband had been out earning me, and in 2018, that script flipped, and I started out earning my husband. And so thus I became the breadwinner, and I had so many bullshit stories that went along with that title. I cannot tell you. But one was I started projecting onto my husband, oh, I'm the one doing all the things. I'm making all the money and da-da-da-da. And I was telling myself all these really crappy stories. Thank God for coaching. Because I was in a session with my coach, and she was like, Kim, how often are you asking for help? And I was like, what? I probably need more help. And she said, how often are you asking your husband of it? She's like, if you asked your husband for help, would he be open to it? I said, yeah, he's the most helpful person. His love language is acts of service. She's like, how often are you asking him for help? I started asking him for help. I started asking him for support. Our relationship changed like within a week. Like suddenly there was passion, because I had built up this story of resentment in my head that was only because it was only my own BS stories that I was telling myself about my own success. It was pride. It was a little bit of guilt, a fear of outshining.
And that can be hard for a man, as our husbands deal with us going through this journey. Like my husband is 100% behind me, and, he has a similar kind of mindset because he's also an entrepreneur. But it's hard for them when you start to become the breadwinner. It's just hard for men. But you can there
was definitely a shift of conditioning that happened, and like that has happened. But it's been so beautiful to see, because
it's grown your relationship.
It's grown our relationship. He's the best father on the planet. Like, and I told him, I said, I don't care. Like you make a dime. Like if it's so long as you're like, I love my dad, but he prided himself more on bringing in the income than actually being present with me. And he would, instead of being present, he was an addict. So we also struggled with that.
I have a similar beginning story. So
yeah. So my husband is not an addict, thank God. And he is also the best, most present father. I said that takes the cake over anything else. So any extra income you bring in, rock on, brother, like rock on. But, and I love it. I love supporting him. I love him supporting me. And I love being able to have that camaraderie and that excitement for what each other is building and that passion for that.
You're doing it together and not watching each other.
It's a together thing. Yeah. And it's not a competition thing. It's not like, I had one podcast that I was on. They're like, well, how do you deal with you being the alpha? I was like, oh, hell no. My husband is in no way a beta. Like, in no way. He is a Texas man. So there is no alpha. It's not an alpha beta thing. It's a masculine energy thing that, like, I do, like, my husband's Mike will tell you, he's like, I am the most girly, feminine, sparkly, masculine energy person he knows. Like I am like, I have glitter pens and glitter things, and I'm super girly. I'm always in heels and like frou things, but drive and ambition, it is, and focus, that I have in spades. And so when I get laser focused on something, I am fully in it. And so receiving anything else or any, like, being open to other feedback, I'm like, nope, I'm focused on this one project and this is getting done. And that's like where my Virgo comes out, and it goes. It goes. Yeah. But he knows to honor that. And he also knows, and we're open and honest to have the conversations with each other when he's not feeling acknowledged for the work that he's doing,
Right.
that we have those conversations to be able to say, okay, I need to be I need to be paying more attention, or I need to make our relationship more of the priority.
That's how you get into alignment.
Project. But it really is about those constant check-ins, constantly checking in, constantly asking for help and asking for support. Like, I would not have been able to build, I do not know how single mothers do it. Every single mother who's an entrepreneur, I'm like, rock on, sister. Like, I do not know how I could have done it without my husband. Like, he has been, and it came with me asking for help consistently, daily, regularly, and also me practicing receiving help. Mm-hmm. Like that was a key. I had to take off my tool belt and like stop trying to fix everything myself and do it all myself, and surrender a bit of control to say, husband of mine, like, please take this. Please help me with this. Please take the wheel in this way. Please help me with this. And it's that constant asking. And he asks me for help all the time too with his stuff, especially tech stuff.
And it's almost the same with business partners, essentially.
Yeah. Well, your greatest business partner is your partner. Like, if you want to tank a business and your productivity, watch your main romantic relationship go down the toilet. Like, that is the quickest way to tank both your business and your own productivity. Yeah. And creativity as well. Because I mean, I've been previously married for a very short term. I ran off with a Navy man at 22. And I remember that even though he was halfway across the world, we were fighting all the time. And I had just wrapped production on my first feature film. And I had this space where I was like, I had no like man physically, living with me. I didn't have, I was able to teach consistently, but I was so creatively and productively drained because my primary romantic relationship was constantly chaotic. And I had about 6 months where I could have been creating, I could have been doing all these new things, but I did not have the capacity because my marriage at the time was so chaotic. And that was when I was like, dude, if we can't get along when you're in Dubai, like, getting in the same household is going to be tough. And when he came back, we separated.
And it's part of the journey. It's part of figuring ourselves out. It's a part of figuring out what you want and how you want to go about getting to where you want to be.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of it, is when you can look at, because I blamed myself for my first failed marriage. I never thought I would be a divorcee ever in my life. And I blamed myself so hard for that and took it as such a failure, but it wasn't. And same with my buyout. It wasn't until I shifted my own perspective on how I perceived it. Yes. I had to shift the perspective on what is the lesson in this? How could this have been the best thing that ever happened to me? And when I look at that, when you look at it from asking that one question, how is this shitty thing the best thing that ever happened to me? I look at like my first failed marriage and I'm like, oh my gosh, it totally 100% prepared me to have an open, honest, candid relationship with my husband, like with my forever husband. Like that relationship totally prepared me to show up 100% authentic, real, not trying to conform myself, not lowering my standards of what I would or would not accept. And I had found a list of mine that I wrote of the 50 qualities that I wanted in my ideal man. I really should have looked at that more often in my early 20s.
We all have?
Right? And I looked at the list 6 months after I started dating Spike, and he hit 48 out of 50, and the 50th was kind of null and void. So he hit 48 out of 50. And that experience was like, oh my gosh. So it taught me to not settle for less. It taught me to really go for what I really, really wanted, was an open, amazing, communicative, candid, authentic relationship with passion and travel. And so here we are in the Gold Coast of Australia. Passion and travel, got it. And then I looked at my failure with my buyout, and I was like, well, thank God that ended. Like, I was so stressed out in those last 6 months with my business before my partner told me he wanted to buy me out. I was waking up, my hair was falling out. I did not have good personal management. I was gaining weight. I was not taking care of myself. I was waking up at 3 a.m. with massive anxiety to answer customer service emails. Thank
Yeah.
God I got out of that. Like, that's could have saved my life, having that. And then it also allowed me to find my aligned business, the business that I've always been in, which has been Crown Yourself. Like,
Yeah.
I've always been in the business of transforming people's stories. I just didn't know it.
I always say this to everyone who, you know, I have this kind of conversation with. I like to teach this. You never go into something or take away from it with regret. No matter what, it's a memory or it was a lesson that helped you grow. Don't look at failures like failures. It's a growth.
Yeah. I mean, in my business, we don't have customer issues. We have customer innovations. Like, that's just one little pivot that we have. So even if a customer comes to us with an issue, or like they, you know, even if there's a broken link or something, I actually have a policy with my team that we reward any customer who identifies something that we could do better. So we give them a reward. It's a small gift or a small training or a small thing, but something that is a gift where it's like, thank you for helping us innovate. Like, that is key, because allow for that feedback, allow for that growth. I learned this from my mentor.
Growth,
Yeah, I learned this from my mentor who I had on my podcast. She scaled her business from 0 to 30 million valuation in 3 years. Wow. And I said, how? And she said, she doesn't believe in failure. It is not even in her dictionary. It is not in the vernacular, and it's not in her company culture.
And doing it that way and thinking of it that way is so powerful, will change your mindset, will help you make things happen every time.
Yeah, because especially for high achievers, so often when we receive feedback that is negative in any way, we perceive that as ruin. We perceive that as, this is going to destroy me, da, 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 da. And we tell ourselves this story because we make it about our identity instead of making it be about a thing outside of us or something else that we can shift or change. The greatest gift that I could give you is separating your identity of who you are at your core and finding your certainty within yourself and separating it out of your business. So that way your business is a baby that is living and breathing on its own, instead of still stuck and attached inside of you, so that you're not meshing your identity with the identity of your business. So that if your business fails, if your business has a bad month, it's not a personal thing. It's a cause and effect thing. It's not, oh my gosh, I am a failure. It's, oh, I didn't do as many sales reach outs. Oh, I didn't do as many outbound marketing. Like, here's the steps that I need to change. Like, instead, it's looking at it from a perspective of, how can I solve this problem with this entity, instead of how do I need to fix myself, or making it a personal identity thing. Like, that was a big lesson that I had to learn as both a mom and as a business owner, of separating, like, the success and the well-being of my child is not my own identity. It's the success and the well-being of my business, it's not my own identity. I know who I am, and I have cultivated a certainty and resilience inside of that. And that when I look at, oh, okay, this either my child is behaving in this way that's not producing wonderful results, or my business is behaving in this way and it's not producing the results that I desire. Well, then what actions can I then shift? Instead of blaming myself, I look at what are the causes of that. So often entrepreneurs, we will look at the bank balance and have that suddenly define our identity, which it is not. It is just like how when you look at the scale, like, and you weigh yourself, that is neither your identity either. Like, it is a number and it is an effect. It is not the cause. So then you have to look at, what are the causes that cause the bank balance to go low, or that cause the weight on the scale to go higher? Like, what were the causes? Because when you look at the causes, and it's not an identity thing, but it's a cause and effect thing, it automatically changes the way that you can suddenly take action and shift things a lot faster than suddenly it spiraling into like an emotional an emotional thing. You can either have your emotions or you can have progress. And I do believe in honoring your emotions, but look at the
Having
energy
room to grow.
expenditure. Yeah, look at the energy expenditure of the emotions versus, okay, how can I shift this? How can I solve this? What are the new causes that I can take that will produce a different effect?
Well, we're